virtually, I think. If he has a conflicting like work thing. I found it really official.
Yeah,
It's in a circuit computer.
it's been weird. It's a new computer, but it's still been weird.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need that one. I don't know.
Rick, how was your trip?
How was your trip?
Whether it's a lot of diving.
Stomach. It's increasing the well, at one point regret it, but I didn't regret it. I'm sorry for already drawing in that state.
Corey, you got a nameplate right here, but I can pass it to you if you want to sit there. It's up to you.
That's
You guys pass that down to Corey. That's what Jennifer just said about her corner.
Most of the time, I didn't even wear my wetsuit. So,
So warm.
yeah, water was so hot.
That's great.
Wow.
I never dove in water that warm. Where'd you go? Down the BVI's down British Virgin Islands. Oh, BVI.
Never noticed that. Were you with a large radio?
I was, well, on the boat, there were 12 older divers, but I went
Okay,
down.
we'll start here in a minute. Do we have on yet or no? Not yet. Okay.
Yeah, 12 on the boat, right, and then.
We've got a fun. We've got everybody except Ron. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Should we just give him a minute to see if he can come on, or I know he said he had a conflicting thing, but.
Slept on the boat.
Break one.
Yeah.
Dove off the boat, went out, one of the Rhode Islands. Yeah, turned out. I've done that.
Just
there. So I. Two trips in a lifetime, yeah. Well, it's kind of, my dive buddy had recovered from cancer. And I told him when he was really sick and undergoing chemo, he didn't die again. So this was a celebration.
Good.
Now.
That kind of 22 dives. I didn't, I don't even.
I have two great.
And these are like the whole lot, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
My brain,
It was fun.
I was like, CD, what's CD? Community development. Yeah, I got it.
So when was we actually with the White House?
Okay, you sent that email? Really? Yeah.
Yeah, I got back in Florida.
I wonder if my computer's not updating. That's weird. Okay. Maybe I'll just close out Outlook and reopen it. Okay, guys, we're gonna get going here shortly.
How are you, Corey?
Hopefully there's some.
Good. Yeah, just.
It could just be my Outlook is not updating, because the last thing I have is from noon. There it is. Yeah, isn't that weird? Okay, I've got it. Oh, there's a bunch of stuff. Okay. I see it now. Thank you.
Keep it down.
All right. Gonna call to order our committee of the whole meeting at 5:33 here. Just welcome everyone. So first up, we have the good of the order. Did anyone have anything for that? All right, so I'm going to use that then to just say a couple things before we get started. So this is our first only budget meeting that we're going to have. And I think it's really important to go into it knowing that this is a collaborative process. Council feedback is not only valuable, it's essential to this being just a robust process. Obviously, the budget just got released today. So with the presentations we're getting today, I imagine today is a little more of an absorbing information. I don't think anyone expects us to have questions ready because we have nothing that we've been able to really sink into yet. So it'll be great to hear from our departments about what they're presenting or proposing for this budget and go from there. And so I think it's totally okay. Don't feel pressure, like I said, to think you have to ask a ton of questions today. We'll have time to absorb this and then come back next time and ask. But of course, we do have budget discussion on the agenda. So if we do need follow-up or have questions, I mean, that's a great time for that. And then lastly, too, committee of the wholes feel a little more casual, and they're meant to because they're discussion, but especially because we're going into budget, I'm just going to ask that everyone raise your hand first and get recognized by me before speaking. I just never know, especially with the budget, what can go on. So this will help me keep it in order. And even with the presenters. So it's sometimes we turn it over to the presenters to call on people, but I'll just keep track of that. So just raise your hand if you want to talk and I'll call on you and then we'll go from there. So with that, we'll move on to our main item here, the department budget presentations. And first up will be our police department with Chief Duvall.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, city staff, and members of the community.
Speak up.
I can talk.
Louder.
Yeah, loud.
So we can make sure, I just
Okay.
want to make sure. you can hear
Perfect.
you on the mic.
Chief Duvall Police, I'll be presenting the biennium budget for the police department for 2023 and 2024. And as soon as we get the slides up on this.
Really quick, I'm just going to interject, Chief. These just got emailed. If everyone needs to see it bigger on their screen, it just showed up in my inbox. So anyways, go ahead, sorry.
So this is the police department budget. If you can go into the next slide, please. These are a list of the agenda items I'll be covering throughout the presentation this evening. For your review. Go to the next slide. So this is a brief description of our department overview along with our mission statement. When I took over as chief, it was part of the transition was developing a mission statement for the PD board. And then the same briefing there at the bottom is what's on our page inside your storyboard within the budget itself in UKG. Next slide. This is the expenditure summary for the police department. If you see it goes from 2019 to 2024, so you have some comparisons for the previous years as well. And this is also located on our main screen for our storyboard in the UKG program. Changes to staffing. Unfortunately, I can't see from far. Can I go up in the middle here?
Yeah,
Perfect.
absolutely.
I don't know if you guys need me at the point.
You might get in front of the camera, but.
So this is the breakdown of our current staff that we have with the police department. We have one chief, one lieutenant, 2 sergeants, and as you can tell, we have an open sergeant position currently. We have a 1 full-time SRO position, which is Officer Dunkley. And then we have a reserve officer who is also Officer Reef at the bottom there. He takes up approximately 0.10 FTE for our department. We have a records administrator, which is Shelley Rose. She's been with our department now almost 20 years. So we're thankful to have her along with us. And then we just hired Courtney Lewis, which is our police administrative associate, which is at the bottom there last year. And she's been wonderful. I mean, I can't express enough good things to say about her. She's really doing a bang up job down there. So our proposed budget changes, precision changes for the next biennium would be obviously getting fully staffed this year. Hopefully by the end of the year, we have 3 people currently in the process that would fill those 3 open positions that you see here. And then we're in the process of training Officer Pa, who also was in our assessment center last year for the sergeant position, to go into that position. He's recently gone to the Sergeant's Academy preparing for that, taking that position after the first year. So once he moves up, that would open up another spot, but we have the 0.5 position, that's our recruit position at the academy. So we hope to have that hired as well before the end of the year. So that person's already standing by. So when Officer Pa moves up, we can slide the new recruit in there, and then we'll have to start planning for that recruit position again because we have a potential officer retiring next year. So we have no new positions being asked for the next biennium for the police department. Next slide, please. So new in 23 and 24, we are in the process of working through a mental health professional ILA with Redmond Police Department. Part of that ILA will be providing the mental health professional a laptop so they can serve Duvall in the community here. So that's our one-time expense. Our body worn camera program, I'll talk about that in a little while, what happened with that in the last biennium. But that's a one-time expense coming up. And then we have 2 vehicles for this year. Ongoing fully funded depreciation 5-year body worn camera program, which I'll discuss later. King County Radio, we've been waiting on this, I think, since a couple of years after I started. So it's been well over 15 years that we've been waiting for this King County radio service to be redone. So our radios are extremely old, they're way outdated. King County's cycling those out. We should have them. Yeah, we have these old brick radios. So King County's in the process now of cycling the new radios out. And we were scheduled to have them last year, and then they pushed it off to this year, and now they're saying it's going to be sometime in 2023. So when we do get those radios, there is going to be a new ongoing service with those radios that we're going to have to pay King County Radio to keep them updated and go through them each year for maintenance. Legal Adams, this is you guys, I think it was last council we saw this. It's a new service that we have to provide as of January. Each city in the state has to provide electronic service court orders. So we had to hire a service to do that for us. So basically what they do is they get the order from the court clerk. The people can go online and file court orders now online. It's all done online. So they don't have to go to court, appear before the judge. They send the initial order to the court, judge reviews the order. He sends it to the clerk sends it to us, and then we serve it electronically. So once we get that order, we review it, make sure it's within the city limits and send it out. It goes to that person's email, all their social media sites. And as soon as they open that order, we get notified that they've received it. And then we fill out a statement, send it back to the court, showing that the order has been filed. So that's all brand new for this year that we have to have in place by January. So is for it. Mental health professional service, like I discussed before, I've been working on this well over 6 months with Chief Lowe in Redmond, and we're finally getting to the end of that process. Came back for a couple questions from our legal department and then sent back to Redmond's legal department. So they're reviewing it currently. We should have that back in the next couple of weeks. I hope to have it before you guys in November 1st meeting, but if not, it'll be the second meeting in November. And then we have increased costs for PD share of WCIA insurance premiums. Next slide, please. Training updates. We still have 24-hour minimum training by the state that we have to budget for. Instructor level courses, 2 hours annually were required by the state to go through crisis intervention training, which is what CIT stands for. De-escalation and force mitigation, bias-based and duty to intervene training. These are all coming out from the reforms. It's additional training that our officers have to go through, that we have to budget for that additional training. New supervisor level training, trying to get our supervisors improved in their positions. And then ongoing supervision and leadership succession planning and training. And all these are all fall under our training portion of the budget. Next slide, please. So this is what I was discussing earlier, carryover. So we do have the body worn camera program that got carried over. It was budgeted for last biennium, but due to staffing shortages and bargaining requirements with the FOP, we weren't able to get that done in this last biennium. So we finally. It is in their new FOP contract that it was negotiated, and they've agreed upon that. So we plan on getting those rolled out sometime next year. So we are requesting for that carryover to be into this biennium from the last biennium. Cutting room floor, economic cuts, police salaries and benefits savings through attrition and openings. We're not requesting any additional funding for offered training enhancements. Both Lexipol and the state offered additional, this training that we can pay for to do. We opted out of that because we feel that we have enough training right now to get the officers to meet the requirements that they have currently. So we cut those from our budget. Staffing capacity, we discussed this a little bit. We currently have 3 officer openings and 1 sergeant opening. We do have 2 lateral candidates and an entry-level candidate in the background process. One of the lateral candidates is from Hawaii, so they will have to go through an equivalency academy when they get here. And it's just as soon as the next available academy is open is when we have to get in there. So we can already start their training once they get on board and get them through the field training process while we're waiting on it opening at that equivalency academy. Then I talked to you about our plan to fill the open sergeant position. And then we have these items pushed to the future. We did have 2 additional vehicles that were due for replacement in the next biennium. And I've gone ahead and pushed those to the 25-26 biennium. So we're only going to do 2 instead of 4 in this biennium. We did request an additional 0.5 officer FTE. We found that with that 0.5 FTE, it's valuable, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to plan when people are leaving. We're still losing an officer average about every 5 or 6 months. So it is good to have that 0.5 in the waiting, but just getting the people on board and getting them, finding the people first of all, and then getting them on board and keeping them. So we were asking for that. So we just pushed that to the future. We'll discuss that later. And then we plan or the development, community development and the police are going to work together to try to get a code enforcement position. And we decided that right now is probably not the time to ask for that. So we'll push that to the future as well. Next slide. Thanks for the question.
Council, any questions? Councilmember Schaefer?
Let's see. Drones. So. Okay. It's my very, I guess, uneducated understanding that drones are becoming more essential to police work. And of course, we don't have an understanding, there's the cost of the drone, there's also cost in training. And, potentially, taking an officer's, time, out of the field to actually operate the drone. So I do understand there's a lot more to it than the drone themselves, but nonetheless, is that something we should consider budgeting for the biennium?
We were considering that. We do have an officer who's extremely interested in becoming a drone pilot, and he's presented me with several proposals. So it's just finding the timing and the budget. I do see the need for it here, but especially as we're growing. It would be phenomenal just to take a drone and fly it from the PD down to the beach and see what's the activity level is down there and so forth, or doing whatever. Drones are doing crimes for crime scenes, helping out with traffic control, to monitoring certain areas that have high criminal activity at certain times of day. They're phenomenal for those types of things. So then they also don't have to drive there because you can hear those engines of police cars coming from several blocks away. So people tend to scatter before we get there. So yeah, they would be very useful in the future. Budget wise, right now we're probably not ready for that, but I do see the need for it. I'd like to pursue that in the future.
Councilmember Neplin and then Isaacson.
Yeah, I just have 2 quick questions. It said something about on the vehicles that they're replacements.
Yes.
So there's no direct budget hit because we already have
those are
been
part of it.
paying in for it and it'll just.
Yeah, that's part
Okay.
of the capital budget. Dana,
Okay.
can you log on real quick and just explain that real quick? She's a bit.
It's okay. If it's
Okay,
already
Dana,
on.
they're already in the capital
Yeah,
fund.
if it's already on the replacement
Yeah.
schedule and it's just a scheduled replacement, then that's what I was curious about. And then I was having a conversation with another council member at the last meeting about how it'd be neat to have those self-defense classes back. I'm sure you remember that. They were very popular with the community. and it was a
I
great
actually
service.
started looking into that this
Did
week.
you?
So, yeah,
Okay.
so the problem that we're finding is a lot of the instructors that we had, because you need at least 2 to 3 instructors per class.
Mhm.
Our 2 other instructors have already gone.
Mhm.
One's on law enforcement altogether, and the other one's at another agency. So we'll have to get somebody else trained. And then the people that we utilize from Snoqualmie and other surrounding agencies have either left their departments as well. So we're having a problem finding those people. Once they shut it down for COVID for that type of training, we found that a lot of these officers have already moved on that we were using in the past. So I do want to bring that program back. I think it's extremely beneficial to our community.
Yeah.
It's a huge COP thing for us.
Yeah.
And I'd love to bring that back. And I'm working with Shelley right now to find out how we can do that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Councilmember Isaacson and then Mercer.
On your very last slide, the last thing you mentioned was code enforcement officer who pushed it. Why? Is it we're not ready for it or trying to save budget? Or?
I can help. This is a joint project between community development and police. And our plan is to update the code first and work with all departments because our code is super old. So we want to get that deployed in this biennium. And honestly, it was a cost savings as well.
And then to follow to the drone question, does it have to be a police officer for legality, or could we have someone?
I have to do some more research on that. I can get back to you.
Right.
Okay, Councilmember Mercer.
I just sort of had a follow-up question about the body cams. Obviously, there's the physical purchase of the body cams themselves. There's the training associated with them. I was curious if there's any ancillary costs around data retention or record retention around storage that is not accounted for in the budget that needs to be budgeted for.
So I've reached out to 5 separate body worn camera programs as far as company wise, and some of them do have that. And some of them we have to provide depending on which route we went. But 3 out of the 5 have cloud-based storage, and that's included in the price of our body worn cameras for that program. As far as the redaction software and that type of thing for records requests. One company in particular offers that service for free, it's included in the price for the cameras. And then one company does a partial thing, but we still have to do our follow-up retention review. And then the other departments leave it, or the other 3 companies leave it up for us to kind of do on our own. So we're leaning towards that company that's included, but I mean, obviously I want to present it to you guys so you guys can make a decision on that, which way you want to go. One's obviously one's top of the line. So that's what we budget for, that top of the line company in case that's the route we go. So the other companies are a little bit cheaper than that company. So depending on which route we go, that could change in our budget as well.
Thank you.
Any Councilmember Levitt, do you have any questions or not yet?
I guess one more on the body cams thing, so the IT support for those cams, like, for example, like if one is faulty or one's not working, is that something that is part of the process when you actually purchase, like, does the company that runs the cameras take care of that for you guys? It's not something you have to internally troubleshoot?
Yeah, they said the turnaround time's fast. I gotta find out what that means.
Yeah.
But if one of our cameras go down, one company is getting ready to build a location in Seattle, so that's going to be beneficial to go with that company. But yeah, that's part of the cost as well. Every 2 years, one company replaces the cameras every 2 years, and another company replaces them every 3, and then the other 3 companies replace them at the end of the 5-year cycle. So depending on which one we go, we're going to get a full replacement at the end of the 5 years, regardless of what company we go with, of all the cameras.
Okay.
I think the only thing I was gonna say, on the drone topic, because it seems so interesting to all of us, is I think especially being a small city, I don't know the differences, when we go down that road at some point, other departments in the city could potentially use it, but I don't know if like the drones used for police are like totally equipped out with stuff or whatever. I don't know. So it'd be interesting to see how it could be utilized for like community events, getting cool footage and using that for economic development. Yeah. So I mean, that could be a really good cost share in the future that, there might be a lot of uses for it besides just police. So
we've had a couple incidences over this last year where we had crisis situations where we've had to call in drones from other departments. They've been extremely useful for contacting the subject who's at a great distance away, so law enforcement doesn't have to go in hands-on or being close enough to talk with the person, so they can just talk through the drone and not put themselves in danger. So they're extremely useful. It's just getting the funding and training. There's a lot of stuff involved as far as legalities. But yeah.
Sure. Director, let's do Director Thomas really quick.
Just for the drone program, there are licensing and FAA and there's training and it takes a while. So we're still going through that process, but it's pretty extensive. There's still a lot of cities that don't have drone programs, partially because of the costs and the training as well.
Fortunately for us, Redmond has the drone program currently, so does King County and State Patrol. So something happens where we have the need for drones until we get our own program in place, we have those options available to us to call them.
Councilmember Levitt.
I was just going to say, I guess semi-tangentially, generally speaking, when you have a drone like map or a sky map, essentially an aerial map, it does also have an impact on people flying personal drones in that area. Depending on your opinions on that, like there's a licensing issue when you're like trying to come in and fly, like if you're filming a commercial, say, fly a drone. If you were just a regular company, that would be something that would then need to be cleared inside the city prior to actual flying. So there may be like a repercussive thing, and in some sense that could be good if you don't want a bunch of people flying drones all over your city. And if you love flying drones, it might be bad. So it depends on land on that particular subject, but it does actually, I think, create like an aerial zone that then is, in some sense, I would imagine, like patrolled by police department in the city, I think. It's been my experience.
It's really interesting.
Very good experience.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll move on to community development with Director Thomas.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and Planning Commissioner. Hopefully I'll be able to see it, otherwise I might have to go up close as well. So my presentation this evening is for both obviously planning and for building. We're a combined department. This is the second budget where we are combined. This is the agenda where we just kind of go through building and planning funds all the way down to changes in FTEs. And we also created this other notable items, which is similar to what police did as well. Next slide, please. And so we come out of the general fund. And so we have the building fund, the planning fund, and then we also get money from the strategic fund in this budget, if that's approved. We also have two special revenue funds, and that's the building and permit fund that was created a couple of years ago. We also have a sensitive area mitigation fund, which while it's not technically active anymore, where we take in money and go do projects, we do have money in it to complete one project. So under the general fund, we have building, planning, and strategic. And the strategic look is really for our long range planning investment. And we'll talk about that in a couple of slides. And then for the special revenue, we have building and permitting sensitive areas, and then our planning manager LTE investment. While that money will come from another source, it will be transferred into the general fund. Next slide. So here's some of our investments with revenue offsets. So currently we have a housing needs assessment action plan grant that's funded by Commerce. It's covering all of our costs with the exception of essentially our staff time. And so that's about $55,000 investment. And then about a month ago, council reviewed and approved our Department of Natural Resources grant. And that's for a minor update under our tree protection, landscape code. And it's also to provide training for our public works department and the creation of the city's first city street tree list. So we're really excited about that. And that was about a $15,000 grant, but we do have matching. So our match is equal to the project cost for the grant. So in 2023-24, we have one-time expenditures with a revenue offset as well. And it is we call it a strategic fund investment. So we are looking at spending about $225,000 on our comprehensive plan. That's our periodic update that we do about every 7 to 8 years. We do have an offset from grant from the Department of Commerce of about $125. In all the years I've been lucky enough to do planning, this is the largest grant we've seen for comprehensive planning. So we're really excited about that. To give you what happened last time in 2015, it was less than $25,000. So we're really satisfied. I wish it would cover all of it, but I think covering half of it is probably the most I've seen. We also are going to invest in our transportation comprehensive plan update. That's a citywide initiative with public works and planning. And that we're estimating at about $250,000, just depending on how much of an update we need. We think that's pretty much in the ballpark. We're also investing in our parks, trails, and open space plan, and we're estimating that cost at about $150,000. And that again will be a shared work plan where we'll host the majority of the work, but it will include parks, public works, and engineering. So residential permits, we always give this data every year. In 2021, we issued about 52 residential permits. That's about our average when you look at us over a 20-year period. This year, we're close to 80 right now. We're going to be over the average, but we're not exactly sure where we're going to be at. And we'll update you again as council as we continue to go through the process. We have now we have some more permits. We have about 120 now in for review on top of what we've issued. So it's a pretty big year. We're hoping to get 80 of those out, an additional 80 this year. In 2023, we're estimating 179 permits, and in 2024, 186, and that'll blow away any record that we have. It's going to be really busy. Plan review is a lot, but this means that our inspection team will really be busy. But we always have WC3 with our contract. We try not to use them. We try to do all inspections in-house because then we keep that revenue. But we'll see how it goes. It just depends on the flow of the permits and inspections. So general fund, we're looking at hiring a planning manager, and this would be mostly for long range planning, and that's to do a lot of the work that has been building up for the last probably 5 to 7 years. It will be a limited term position for 3 years. They will manage the comp plan, the Parks, Trails, and Open Space plan, and transportation plan assistance, along with code amendments to implement the plan updates. It's really important this time that we make sure that we update our development regulations. I did want to let you know that we will come back mid-biennium with the cost estimate and a revenue request for that work. By the time we get to this time next year, we'll better know what codes need to be updated. When I mean our codes, that's our municipal code, chapter 14, and then possibly even some development updates within the public works standards as well. Next slide. So let's talk about our change to FTEs. So in 2023, we're looking at our assistant planner being promoted to an associate planner. And then in 2024, the permit specialist 1 to a 2, and our plans examiner 1 to a plans examiner 2. So our assistant planner has done a really good job meeting all of the standards and actually exceeding them. And so we're looking at that promotion. And that position is a hybrid position, which will remain a hybrid position in 23 and 24, where it's 50% permit specialist and 50% planning. And so if all the certifications are gained for the permit specialist position, then that person will also move from a permit specialist 1 to a 2. Our plans examiner passed all of their tests this year. And so we're now allowing them to do more complex inspections, letting them build up their skill set. And then if they receive their certifications for plans examiner 2, then we'll anticipate a promotion in 2024. Next slide, please. The temporary position does have a large cost. So I always want to talk about that. It's about a $332,000 investment. And we're hoping to begin that position in January. I'll be coming to council here, either the next council meeting or one after it, asking for pre-authorization. So you'll see an updated job description, the costs, and some additional information. Building and planning, this is kind of just like I call them our other notable items. We have ongoing GIS work now to support OpenGov, and that's our citizen services. We did not anticipate that when we initially went with OpenGov, but it would have happened with any service that we went to. We do not have a GIS specialist or a person or a body, and so we do have to go out for that work. We don't have enough work for a position, so it gets contracted. As we were talking with Chief DeBach, we are doing a code enforcement policy update. We had actually budgeted it for 21 and 22, and that work didn't get done. So we're actually going to push it to 2023. We are having an internal kickoff though in November, so we can begin that work. Historically, the building official / community development department is the host in most cities for code enforcement. And so our project manager for that project will be our building official, Ryan. And we're excited about that. We all know that that policy needs to get updated. It was a core request also from our mayor, this last budget cycle and going into this budget cycle. We were really hopeful that we could hire a code enforcement officer, but at the end of the day, we have to have a balance. We're trying to balance all of our needs and our levels of service. So we think that we can do a pretty good job, get the plan updated, the policy updated, and then continue to do internal code enforcement as time allows. We're also going to do some anticipated minor code amendments. We have some of these that are already drafted, but they need to continue to go through the process. And that is signage, permit processing, comp plan amendment, and wireless facilities. And we really like to get to some of the other code amendments of our development standards based on internal capacity. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Isaacson?
You answered one for me already about one of the larger grants, but there were a couple places where we're getting grants from the history of the city. Is that pretty typical? We'll continue to get those grants. as we move
They're a
forward?
little larger than they historically have been, and so that's good for us. We don't historically get a ton of money in planning. And so we've seen quite a few come through in the last 2 years. We're hopeful as well that after we finish this Department of Natural Resource grant for our tree protection and landscape and training, that that will lead into a grant for a inventory of our tree canopy.
Councilmember Naplan?
Yeah, you had mentioned the volume of permits that we'll likely have, which will mean lots and lots of inspections. And you had mentioned WC3 being a potential support. And I think was it this year? Was it WC3 that we've been having trouble with them having capacity, or was, okay.
Yeah,
Is that something that's a concern in the upcoming year?
I am not sure, just because of where the economy is at, honestly, like
Right.
right now, we are definitely seeing challenges getting somebody, from WC3 or any of our other consultants. And so we'll just have to, continue to manage that. There are not a lot of service providers out there for this type of work. So, yeah,
Okay.
we could be challenged, but I think that a lot of the other cities, from what I can see, are starting to slow down a little
Right.
bit.
I think, what is it, Carnation that shares with Snoqualmie or someone? I think some of the cities, share that
There are
resource as
definitely
well.
some shared, there are
Mhm.
definitely some shared services. out
Yeah,
there.
so anyway, just curious. Thank you.
Any other, Councilmember Mercer?
Just sort of a quick question. I know you touched on this, Director Thomas, at a previous meeting, but I think one of the, consequences of not having the Parks and Open Space plan updated is we've missed out on certain grant opportunities that would have allowed us to sort of move forward with some other objectives. As part of sort of the work allocation, I'm assuming some of that will be taken into account and sort of front loading within the legislative timeline that we have for some of the comp plan amendments and other things, because I think that would be great if we could get that sort of up and running to sort of assist with some of our other budget priorities going into 2024.
That's a really good question. Larissa, who's our city engineer, her and I have been working the last couple of weeks, just talking about that update, pulling up our original PTOS, all the documentation, so that we can start to look at scope, but also look at new requirements that are out of commerce or national recreation standards. So my guess is we'll have a scope of work for that by the end of the year. So we're going to be issuing several RFPs, between January and probably March, and the PTOS will be one, the comp plan will be one, and transportation will be one as well.
Councilmember Naplan?
Yeah, that just reminded me, is getting the Parks Commission back up and running a possibility during this biennium?
You know what, it's a really good question. We've had a lot of internal discussions. We're still going through budget. I think that, obviously, if we're going to update the Parks, Trails, and Open Space plan, at a minimum, we'll have to have an advisory committee. Even if it's not up and running for our policy or amended policy, we will absolutely have a robust advisory committee.
I think what makes me a little bit sad sometimes is we work so hard on these plans and then they sit on a shelf because they don't get implemented. So I just want to make sure that if we're investing all of this money, there is the next step plan to make sure that it doesn't just, gather dust.
Councilmember McHenry, Steve.
Oh, Director Lynch.
That sounds exciting, but I think we have to focus on planning commission vacancies and council vacancies, like we have vacancies in some places we need them. I know comp plan is gonna be huge next year, but that has to be full. Is it only 5 now?
We have 7 right now. We're full, but we historically will have a committee for comp plan that has 2 or 3 planning commissioners on it, a couple of council members, and then, different organizations and nonprofits. And then the same would be for all of our other planning projects as well, that are joint between, our department and public works, engineering. Maybe else wants to partner.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough point. It's just, I know a lot of people who would be really excited to come sit down and just talk about parks, but they're like, I don't want to be on council. I don't want to be in planning commission. So totally point well taken. But I think some people just are a little more specialized and like, oh, that's cool. I just want to talk about that. It's fun. Yeah, exactly. Cut out all the other stuff. Let's just talk about playgrounds. Anyways.
Say their role is if they want to be on the park committee, they also have to be on the club.
Might need Daniel to tell us we can technically do that, because that's a good idea. Any other questions for Director Thomas? All right, looks like that's it for now. Thank you. Next, we're on to the clerk's office. Yay.
I'm just gonna stay here.
That's fine.
There's my face. So question I'm often asked at the social gathering is, what do you do? And I say, I'm a city clerk. Oh, what does that person do? And so I think it's a really important point. So the city clerk coordinates the legislative process. I do your packets, your agendas, and the noticing for the meetings and organization of meetings. I'm also responsible for the public records management program and public records requests as sort of like open public meetings and open public records are sort of my main things that I do. And city clerk also administers the city business licensing and animal licensing at the front desk. And other duties as assigned. So at a small city, the clerk is a popular gap filler. So, like, for example, the former clerk used to do the arts and the arts commission, or, the clerk is going to do the website because we don't have anybody for that. Or the clerk's going to do the Light Up Duvall event or Duvall Day because we don't have anybody for that. So a lot of things tend to sort of, oh, that's a city clerk. That's a very general term. You could do any number of things, couldn't you? So, because the city clerk knows a lot in general about the city. So that does sometimes make sense. Next slide, Sarah. And then, so I just made this really basic. This is the above and beyond type things that I'm asking for. And these are actually out of the IT budget. So they're not really out of my city clerk budget. Because they sort of impact the whole city. That's why they're taking out of there. So I'm asking for records request software, and I've gotten an estimate of $10,000 annually. And then also looking for email search software for public records requests. So those two things kind of go hand in hand. And then I'm also asking for a deputy city clerk, and that would be a promotion for the admin 3 person to deputy city clerk. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Public Records Act very briefly to help you understand why it's so important that I get this software and staffing. And this can be really dry. So Public Records Act, I just focused on the difficult parts of it. So we have to respond to requesters within a specified time frame. So within 5 days of receiving a request, we have to acknowledge the request. And then if we need more time to find their records, it has to be based on a very strict set of criteria. So additional time can be to clarify the intent of the request, locate and assemble information, notify third parties. We have to stay within these constrictures and strictures, might not be the right word. But records requests must be tracked and indexed according to law. Agencies have to prove that a reasonable search was conducted. If someone comes back and says, why, I know there's this record, why didn't you find it? And we can say, hey, we looked here, we looked here, we looked here, we looked here. Sorry, we missed it. You know, we did conduct a reasonable search. Obviously, you'd want to conduct a reasonable search anyway. But, you know, sometimes things get missed. But, and there's little limitation on what can be requested. So up until recently, a valid request was, I want every record of the city. And that was a valid request we had to honor. But there's just recently a change at the state legislature that was not a valid request, but it was up until about 3 years ago or something. So, and you know, certain problem requester could come in and they're out there, and certain people like to try to make a living off of doing negative public records requests, unreasonable public records requests. So we currently don't have a very high volume of public records requests, but at any moment, someone could walk through the door and cause a very huge issue for the entire city. And let's see, any exempt information has to be redacted or withheld following a defined process. So if I redact an email, I have to prepare a redaction log that says exactly what page was redacted and which RCW applies and how it applies. And it's very time consuming, very, very time consuming. And then if an agency is out of compliance with Public Records Act, per day fees can be charged by the courts, and it can bankrupt a city, as we saw with Gold Bar, for example. And the existence of agency systems to track and retrieve records reduces penalties. So if the judge sees certain things, and that's one of the things that they would reduce a penalty for, they saw that. There's other things too that I didn't list here for brevity. So here's our current manual process for public records requests. So a request is submitted by email, or people fill out a physical form, and it's manually tracked in an Excel spreadsheet. And then notifications of time estimates, installments, clarifications are all usually done by email. A staff member, you know, so the city clerk will take in a request, log it in, email the requester, and then I'll set up folders on our shared drive, and I'll email a staff member and I'll say, hey, Acela, somebody's requested records about this piece of property. Would you mind searching for this? And she emails back and says, yeah, sure. Okay, I'll put it in the folder. Give me 5 days to do that, or whatever. And then I'll go back and I'll communicate with the requester over email. And usually when staff members are looking for records, they don't usually track where they looked. Like, okay, I looked here, and then I looked here, and then I looked here. It's very time consuming to do that. And then the records are just placed in that folder on the shared drive. And then somebody says, okay, I'm done searching. And then I say, okay, and I go in and I review the records for any exemptions, and then I'll redact them myself if they're fairly straightforward. If it's something more complicated, I'll ask Daniel to redact it, because if it's tricky. Most of the time that doesn't happen. But another thing to include that I think is very important is the police department does their own public records requests. The city clerk does not get involved in the police records at all. And we're able to do that because we have Shelley, who is so experienced and so great. I don't know, you know, if she'll be with us forever. So I think that, you know, we are required to report to the state about our public records requests, and as the system is currently, it's not visible. I can't see what's happening in PD. I can't see like, oh, she's getting like 50 million requests this month or something. I can't tell. And there's not like standardized templates, or I trust that Shelley's doing it correctly. I know she is, but there's not transparency there. So, and then an automated process, if we got a software like Next Request or GovQA, a requester would submit online. They can search past requests. Like, let's say we have a controversial issue and which could happen at any moment. And then 10 million people come and they want the same records. Someone can go and say, oh, look, someone requested the records about masking at City Hall and 10 other people requested that. They can search it for the previous requests. And they just receive automated communications and status updates. Whenever staff does their search internally, we upload the documents to GovQA. I can communicate with someone. I can say, hey, your deadline's coming up for finding these records. Can you please do this? You know, like internal communications that are all kept in the record of, you know, to track like our response. And I can pull up reports, which also helps the police with their accreditation. Because I experienced that at the city of Slim, they were going through an accreditation process and they were able to use the public records request software for that. And then redactions are performed within the software. You can calculate fees. People can even pay fees if you enable that functionality. And then you share documents with requesters using the software, which is very convenient for everyone. So that's the public records request software piece. And then now the email searches, I didn't pull up statistics, but the #1 requested record are emails. And most of our city business is done by email. It is so common. I'll do an email search and 2,000, 3,000 emails will come up. And I will have to sit there and look through 2,000, 3,000 emails to try to find the ones that are responsive or exempt or whatever. And the way I'm doing it currently is a zero cost option. But it's using Microsoft eDiscovery, and it involves going in there is very simple search terms. It's not robust. You have to download one large PST file with the 3,000 emails. If I could show you, I probably should have shown you, but you download it to Outlook, and then each person's inbox is shown, like Amy Okerlander, Amy McHenry, Jennifer Napland, and I have to click on each of those and look through each of those, and there may be duplicate emails within each of those boxes. And then I create a new PST to sort of weed out and put the responsive ones into the new PST file. And I don't know, I'm not the IT person, but PST files are, sometimes they become corrupt, and I have to use a little fix-it program to fix it because it's corrupt. And then I had a records request recently this year that I had spent a lot of time sorting through it, and something happened and there was nothing there. I opened up the PST file and it was all gone, and I was in tears, and I had to call the requester and say, I'm so sorry, please, I'm so sorry, I lost it. And they were kind enough to be patient with me, and I made it through that, but I shouldn't, I mean, that's just, it could be a real serious legal problem if the requester wasn't so nice. So, so it's the eDiscovery interface. It's not intuitive, and it's not tracked, but we currently have a piece of software called Smarsh that we use for text message archiving only, but it's very capable of archiving emails. It can archive website, it can archive social media, it can archive all the stuff in one interface. So it has like a robust search capability, everything, all the weeding out and sorting and stuff is done within Smarsh. So I don't have to download a PST, re-upload a PST or anything like that. Everything that occurs is tracked, like so it says Sarah went in at 5 PM on Friday and did this search, and it shows that Sarah did this or somebody else did that in the system, which tracks it. And any other records are stored, like, let's say it's a duplicate request, I can see, I don't know how long it's stored, but I think I can see in 2021, oh, I did this search, and I can just pull up my search from 2021, whereas in e-discovery, it times out and it's done, it's gone. So, anyway, I would really appreciate Smart. And then the last thing is staffing for records. So right now, I really feel like I dedicate a lot of my time to the council and the meetings, and not as much time to records management. So deputy clerk position, I would envision would be focused on records and information management and public records requests. They could manage the purchase, setup, and implementation of the software and training of staff on public records requests. They can assist in the design, development, and implementation of a records and information management program, form a staff committee for records that we used to have that we don't currently have that would work on records management. If I could show you our O drive, I think it would be shocking. Not gonna hide it. It doesn't look good. Our records are definitely not as organized as they need to be, that they're required to be. So there's a backlog of records management tasks that just requires more staffing to get on top of. And then I would also think the deputy clerk would support the city administrator, the city clerk with other, administrative things, but I would want that person to really work on records, I think. So. And that's it.
There are questions?
If you have any questions, yes, please. Didn't have the question slide, but go ahead.
Councilmember Lovett and then Napa.
I had two questions regarding the current process and record requests. Like, I mean, it seems to me like there's a lot of potential pitfalls in the current process, just in terms of all sorts of places. But I wonder with that other Smarsh, like Smarshmallow kind of Smarsh.
Yeah.
I wonder with that software, if it's something that has a long, like is it a newer company, or is it a newer program, or is it like have a long history yet?
I have used Smarsh I used in my former position for about 7 years. It's been around for a long time. It's highly functional. As a person who's had my records requests, my emails requested, I don't even know how many times. It organizes them and it has these check boxes where you could say exempt, non-exempt, exempt, why, and it starts classifying them for you. So as the person who has to respond, has all these drop-down menus, and between going through my own emails and searching and doing Smarsh, maybe a fifth of the time it took to do a Smarsh look.
Yeah, that's my question was really around, like, onboarding a giant program that is going to be very helpful, and then sunsetting the program or being integrated with another program, and then you have this entire backlog of stuff that then is, not functional with a new system. But if it is a vetted and old system, that's a good thing to know. And then I guess the other thing is I would imagine in there is like some sort of digital footprint or watermark that is like tracking, like you're saying, everything, so that then should there be an event where all systems go down, there's like a digital footprint where the Excel spreadsheet doesn't like go by the wayside, but there's somewhere else that we have everything in the cloud for.
The Smarsh is a cloud-based one.
Oh, it is the cloud-based one.
Yeah.
Okay. And the current one is not cloud-based at all. It's not even like tied to OneDrive or
No.
anything?
No,
So it's
I don't think
literally
so.
local servers?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And the GovQA or the next request is also like a web-based thing, so you would take the files and upload them to the cloud for the public records request.
Got it. Got it, and it's just pretty much automated with the other system. Like it
They-
just goes up anyway, no matter what.
Well, Smarsh and like one of those other ones don't integrate,
Right.
but they complement each other. But they're not.
Okay, no, that's helpful.
Councilmember Napoli?
Yes, you'd mentioned that police does their own thing with public records.
Yeah.
Is this software something that they would want to use? Do they have their own software? Like, it's. go ahead.
Yeah, it would be used by the police and,
Okay.
and I have talked with Shelley and she's on board and definitely is in favor of getting it.
Okay, so both components of the records search kind of infrastructure and then the email searching, both those pieces could be utilized by PD.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Which is great.
Councilmember Isaacson?
It's kind of a statement that you could probably answer. I think what I'm assuming you're saying is $10,000 for the request for the software. Is that what it was?
Yeah, 10,000 annually for the public records request
I
software.
think you probably sound like maybe a quarter of your time doing records search, you think.
It depends. I spent a lot of time this year because of a certain requester who will remain unnamed.
Right.
I spent a lot of time.
So at least quarter of your time.
So
I
it
think you get paid,
depends.
I think you get paid more than $40,000 a year, so return on investment would be worth $10,000.
Right, yeah, I think so.
Just a number crunch idea in my head for
Yeah.
everyone else. The time it would free up and,
Yeah.
So it's not just the clerk's time.
oh no,
It's-
yeah,
it's
Yeah.
everybody.
I'm only using her as an example.
Yeah, there have been a couple of requests where planning has spent 40+ hours on one request.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, question related to redaction. The redaction software, is that in itself sufficient for redaction, or does it still take manual work on top of that?
So the software we use right now is Adobe. And I can just electronically do it. But then I also have to do the redaction log, which is like a chart. That you say, I redacted this page and here's why. And that's manual. So I do so it's just one step above taking a piece of paper and blacking it out.
Not a big step.
Whereas with the GovQA or the next request or whatever, you can redact it and it'll automatically create a redaction log for you based on your redactions.
Okay, so it still is manual work to redact things. I mean, the software is not going to be smart enough to know exactly what needs to be redacted or not, right?
Well, I worked with GovQA and there was a functionality where you could tell it to recognize certain words or something. But I was really frightened to use the computer making the call for me, because sometimes it can be sort of a gray area as to is that attorney-client privileged or not,
Yeah.
or something.
Okay. Well, it sounds like this new software would be a big time saver, if nothing else.
Councilmember Isaacson?
One more question, that cost, is that a recurring license cost each year?
Yeah.
So it'd be $10,000 every year.
Right, yeah, it would be a new ongoing cost. But, if we get a lawsuit for public records requests, it could be very
Just for clarity.
expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just say, I think records is not something people really think about unless there's a big issue. It's kind of just in the background happening. And I mean, you're right. It just takes one request to just completely blow everything up and just get out of control. I think this is great. Thank you for explaining it all. I love automation, and seeing just the manual process is so, I mean, I don't know. It's a lot for you all to be going through. I think that, so on the annual cost though, do they typically escalate? I mean, I'm assuming it must increase over time, or has it been pretty steady? Do we have any idea? Because it sounds like it's been around for a while. I was just curious.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, pretty
It's
steady.
just, Go ahead.
So the budget that I managed that had Smarsh in it, we paid the same cost for 4 years and then had a slight escalation of, I think, 0.2%.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
just fraction.
But reasonable. They're not gonna just like, bam. Yeah, I think it's really, I think there's no way to really quantify how much time staff puts into record stuff. I mean, and I think you would hit that mark pretty quickly, like Councilmember Isaacson was getting at. So, all right, any other questions?
I would just say that
Good.
it sounds like it's also there's a security
Mhm.
layer there too, that would
Yeah.
almost to me like, there's the time and the money component, but the security component is large as
Yeah.
well. Just underline.
Yeah, yes, for sure. All right, sounds like there's no more questions. Well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thanks.
Next up, we have Public Works with Director Lenashevsky.
Did this get emailed? I don't think I have.
That one might not be in. No, I don't see it.
Are you talking about public works?
Yeah, I didn't see it in the, in
We'll
an
get it,
email.
yeah, we'll get it.
Refresh your screen.
Okay, I am refreshing and have been.
It's in space, the cliff later sky is holding it.
Make sure I have.
And it is literally
Connected.
off the press, so.
We might take a minute.
Yeah. Did you just send it? Oh,
I
okay.
didn't want to
Just a second
distract
ago.
when you're in the clerks, that wasn't done before she started.
Yeah.
There it is.
There we go.
Thank you.
Feel free to delete everything. Steve, let us know.
Just-
Special folder.
Okay.
You don't have any emails.
Oh, boy. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Steve Lenashevsky, Public Works. In an effort not to over or underwhelm, I hope I come in the middle. So we'll march through some slides. There are detailed slides at the end, which are past the presentation that put like a break in it. If we wanted to get into the actual dollars and cents of every fund. But as you can see on the next slide, Public Works, manages 16 lines of business. This current biennium budget, the 2-year budget, is a little over about $42 million in ops and capital work. Currently, that is with 6 physical people, because we have 2 vacancies we haven't filled. We're kind of consolidating, and I'll get to that. So it is a multitude of work. Obviously, there's plenty of support from the clerk's office and other departments, but a lot of activity going on in the field. So operationally, about 4.3 million just out of the general funds, so that's streets, engineering, and parks. I didn't even count emergency management because it's just there. TBD is our new overlay system. That is about $1.1 million. Big Rock itself is not quite $1 million for the 2-year budget. The capital funds, I didn't count REIT since they generally will occupy, who knows, as long as I've been around 20 years. They don't really fund utilities. Utilities are sufficient and should be on their own without using the capital resources for other elements. Street CIP, park CIP, those are fed by what you call impact fees. So they're not a general facilities charge, they're impact fees. They're differently defined by the state and our CWs and as far as their eligibilities. The water CIPs, so the utility CIPs are about 12.7 million. The other CIPs for parks and streets come up to about 11.3 million, including the building fund, which is 303. And operations, we're at 13 mil for water, sewer, storm. And we have the building maintenance fund now, which looks like a big bar, but it's like 200 grand a year, just so we can quantify the annual work we do on the facilities. So next slide is just a tabulized kind of breakout. Next slide 5. So one-time items that are in the general fund, we're participating with planning and the park, trails, and open space work. That's, I don't know what you would call it. It landed in our fund, but it will be a group effort on everything related to parks, trails, and open spaces citywide.
In my budget too.
Did you double count?
I don't know.
There you go. Look at that, savings every day. I bet Dana's hearing us and can check.
Yes.
Transportation comp plan, again, it's a 2-year budget, so we put 125,000 in each year to participate in the transportation items related to the general city comprehensive plan. So as that ginormous elephant starts down the path of work. You know, what the city wants to look like has to be vetted through the transportation network. It's a big, sure, you're gonna check utilities. We know the capacity of most of our utilities. They're differently, I guess, managed. In transportation, there's a model we own, but we don't physically have it. We don't have the program to do. We have a consultant who help us out with that and make sure we're meeting our levels of services, not only now, but in the future. What are our levels of sort of standards? So we're going alongside the comp plan and testing things. There's going to be new elements, I'm sure, that are going to be related to transportation and multitudes of mobilities. So sustainability, all that will be integrated. So that's there. How much we can do about it. We hope to go out and solicit for a proposal soon with planning. And then the emergency plan was in the current budget. It's rolling over. I'm working with Department of Military to get our extension passed, since it is effectively due last year. So next slide. A couple of things too that were asked to be provided for. One, I would say you're more aware of than the other, but the $150,000 in the ARA, the American Rescue Plan Act fund. So we have $30,000 that's utilized and currently under work programming with Transpo to look for solutions at the Main Street and Woodinville Duvall / Virginia Street intersection. Seeing if there's any operational low-hanging fruit that we can find, whether it's rechannelization, signal timing work, phases of the signal, maybe simply placement of stop bars, little things like that that we could then implement. And I think the number we landed on was about $120,000. So hopefully we can find some things to help that intersection and then implement it in the 2-year budget process we're in. And then we asked ARC to help us provide a kind of city hall pre-design and site scoping program that would come, of course, after we get through the actual citywide master program plan that they're working on. And they did say it's hopefully coming soon. They know they're behind. I've been nagging and bugging, and I know we would love to have it done. We're getting close. The next slide is Public Works related equipment. Adding a new vehicle to the fleet, so it has a new charge, as well as the programmatic annual set asides that will go into the equipment fund. And then hopefully, I don't know if anybody's heard yet, but new equipment is purchased by the fund. So Public Works employees, granted there's 10 operational folks and 8 technical non-operational folks. We're all split in and amongst streets, sewer, parks, water, storm, general fund, engineering. So whoever the vehicle's for will then get funded by those programs. And then annually, I think the depreciation on trucks is 7 years. So then every 7 years, you figure out what replacement is, divided up, and everybody pays their fair share. So that is there. And then we also are putting in a boom lift. I think in the physical document, I might call it a scissor lift, which the scissor lift goes straight up and down. It doesn't articulate and roll in this fashion. So this is the one we scoped and spec'd and have estimates for. It kind of came about at the beginning of ARPA, like, hey, if we had some stuff, what would you like? So this was on that list. It wasn't funded in that way, but we rent them for several things. We could rent them for many things, but we don't because we can't afford that operational rent. Just to rent it for the holiday lighting event, right, is $3 to $5 grand, depending on how many days we have it in preparation for the month. So just on that element alone, the return is 6-7 years. Adding the water tanks, the banner poles are broken. So the banner poles and the Virginia and Stevens on Main Street, they have guts. They're very simple. They look like a winch in a boat. It's inside there. You cannot fix them. I've got about the skinniest arm and can get into there to the best of our staff's abilities. And it's jammed. You have to trade it out to get it down. It's going to take a crane, traffic control, thousands of dollars. So we don't have to do anything but use this to change banners safely. So that's an element. Use it at the water tanks, whatever else is on there. Maintaining and trimming our own trees, street trees, right? They don't stop growing. We need to do more of that. We're getting into that business. I think you heard Laura mention the grant program. Anna, our on-call arborist, is going to provide that service. She has already started that service. We had her out in the last 2 years, not only helping us trim and maintain vegetation, but being there with the guys, training them and helping, literally doing it with them, which is awesome. I think Anna's a great asset. She fits right into our Misfit Toys theme for staff. So someday maybe she'd work here, but yeah. So that's about the only equipment. Getting into FTE, the next slide. And in your current org chart, we are 19 folks, including myself. I'll start with wastewater since it's the easiest. As an operations manager and 2 operator 3s. Based on our actual process type and size, we are required to have operator 3s on staff. That is a state requirement. We are not required to have many. We're required to have 1. But we're lucky enough they all 3 have their licensure. Our operations manager is retiring next year, no matter how much anybody thinks he wants or we want him to stay. It's not going to happen. So we're planning for his replacement. And we did have the Department of Ecology out. They had their own transition. So in our permitting requirements for the state, they do annual inspections. They were here with their new manager and their team, and they were quite shocked when they showed up for the meeting. And is this all the people that are going to be in this meeting? And like, this is all the staff we have. They're like, oh my gosh, this is the smallest staff we've seen out of any of our operating treatment plants. So they do a lot. It is aging. It is taking a lot more work on a daily basis. So you'll see that's in the FTE request. Public operations, we call them, the MOC or maintenance center right below City Hall. There's 10 there. Supervisor, currently 2 leads. We just did go through the salary study. So the arrangement now is maintenance 1s, 2s, and 3s, as opposed to previously parks 1s and 2s. So I think I got that right. We have summer helpers. Those guys we haven't had any gals, or I'd say gals, but that crew is awesome. The amount of work that they get through in parks and storm has just been insane. If you live by a pond, you probably can tell and recall, if you've been here greater than 10 years, most of the ponds are full of blackberries. Now they're pretty well nibbled down to grass and long grasses, and it used to take them about a week per pond. Now it takes them 4 hours, right? Programmatic maintenance makes it easier. Getting to that point is amazing. So they're worth their weight in gold. They're great kids, mostly high schoolers or young college. And we set a budget aside and try to fill it with as many as we can. We used to be pretty rigid in in interviewing and hiring, I can only do, 5 weeks or 6 weeks, and we wouldn't take them. I'm like, who cares? Like, they're good kids, get them in and let them go, and they can have their summer, their week off here and there, and we're not paying them, right? They're just hourly, and they like the job. They do a great job. They're learning how to do actual work in the field. And I think we had 5 this summer in amongst the time that we had some of them. So yeah, excellent resource for us. So that is our current system. Engineering. So there's 6 of us, budgeted 8, and an intern. 2 years we've had the intern now. It's been fantastic. And the stormwater program coordinator and the assistant city engineer. Although by budget I can't kill it. I obviously have the resources once it's approved to hire it. We've tried to recruit the stormwater program coordinator 3 times and failed. So come to the conclusion that at this time, we're going to consolidate those 2 positions into one role and find an assistant engineer, like a young engineer, to help with all those programs. It should still offload most of the work from city engineer Larissa and our office wizard Sarah. Not perfect, but that's what we're going to do. We do affect the general fund to some extent. So with the budget, we try to be sensitive. I think we've all taken some stuff off the table, and we're willing to do that, to get everything we can done. And recruiting is continual. I actually have a Zoom tomorrow with our intern from last summer, or this just a month and a half ago. So fingers crossed. But yeah, that's existing FTEs. Next slide. So proposed changes. Ken just went over the transition in engineering from stormwater and assistant to just one. That's obviously a positive impact to the budget. Second change, again, we have 1s, 2s, and 3s now. Currently, per our contract, 3s are CDL drivers. We continue to need more CDL drivers. So the crew leads are CDL drivers and the 3s. So we are setting aside money annually to train and get CDL licensure for staff the next 2 years. So we'd like to be at least half floated with CDLs. It's very common for the 2 trucks to be going in the summer, and then again in the winter with driving and someone somewhere else, right? And yeah, you could come back, but every time you gotta change a guy from a job, you know, you're 15, 30 minutes of stuff, and it is interruptions that, you know, we don't need. It is good to have that, you know, emergencies, after hours, you know, it's great credentialing. There is, you know, talk through the contract process. Next year, we're up for Teamsters. So that might be a different classification because it currently is tied to the maintenance 3. It could be part of a 2 and then a kicker or something will work out. But right now it is what it is and we need it. So item 3, the project manager. We do have 2 project managers. They're doing great work. Bid opening tomorrow for 142nd sidewalk. I think we had 19 contractors registered, which is insane. So yeah, Gavin had the walkthrough today. The police station with the chief, we had 4 contractors show up, which is really good. That one's really weird, as small of a job as it is, right? Credentialing, getting someone in there who can pass a federal background. I mean, it's tough. So hopefully we get the 4 to bid and get that done. But yeah, there's a lot going on. The senior project management role, I think through the new salary process was recommended, and we have one of our PEMs is a PE. And again, this is not knocking anybody we've had and have, but having an engineer as a manager is different than having someone as a project manager be project manager. He's not an engineer. Anybody can be trained if they're the right person to do the job. But having a licensed PE is worth its weight in gold. You know, new guys designing stuff and working on other projects and doing things that, I mean, he jumped into what are we at, $5 to $6 million sewer upgrade, having never done sewer, right? And that's just who he is, and we're super lucky to have him. So recognition and the roles that we have are important. So that's on the list there. And then the temp is just, we budgeted 3 months for overlap to have a manager for our current operator's retirement. So we'd like to, you know, shadow, get that going. And if that means also someone from internally as we open it is qualified, we can have a couple of attempts. If you were around last year when we lost our PMs, I put an open call to existing staff, like, hey, anybody on existing staff want to come try project management? Like, we need someone to pay bills, run around and do some projects, help out. And we had a couple, we interviewed and we picked one to run that with us, and he ended up actually applying when we had the full-time job. And so I'm thinking of maybe trying the same thing. Hey, we have 2 operators. Are either of you interested in being, you know, the manager? Are you capable? We've been doing some tests because, you know, Mike's been really good to himself on taking a week fishing trip. It seems like every 5 weeks. So there's a lot of good action I've had with the 2 operator 3 that we do have. But if one of that works out, then, you know, backfilling any role would be great to have 3 on staff at any time. So that's 2023, 2024, same thing. We would be up to the hopeful amount of CDL drivers, assuming there's no attrition happening. The senior PM stepping into my hope to have a capital program. You know, when we have $13 million in annual capital projects, that needs more than my focus that I can give it, as well as Larissa's focus that she can give it. So having someone to kind of handle that and not only handle what's going on, but help us prepare and plan to deploy the next wave of projects right behind and getting that rolling, I think is going to be a fantastic feature. The assistant engineer, you know, with our intern this summer, again, you know him, he did great. We'd be happy to have him back if he would come. just more horsepower. And I think having anybody behind the PMs and the engineer, Larissa, is gonna be a good way to catch up on some production and getting into some great relationships with our consultants. So there is a lot of good going on, no matter how busy it is. Then lastly, one more back. Converting a 3 to a lead so we can focus on parks. In 24, we do focus and receive the operation and maintenance requirements of the Rio Vista and the Toll Brothers parks. Of the existing parks we maintain, right, there's 13 or so in town, not counting McCormick because it's like 60 acres, right? We maintain a portion of it. Those acreages are about 8.3 acres of mowed or weeded landscape citywide. We're going to assume the 5 acres new, which is not fully vetted at 5 manageable acres. We're under 4, but well over 3.5. So we're increasing our work programming by 30+%. The irrigation alone at Toll Brothers is about 20% larger than our ball field, which is 10 acres. So it is a finely manicured setup. Like, of course, the guys are terrified that they have to maintain that thing. So with our city's standards requiring what we required, we now have to maintain it in the summer of 2024. So that is the build up for parks as we go to the next slide. So that's change in FTE, not that. And then new FTEs. So we are looking to go to 2 additional parks. We've had some discussions on the side. This is the start of the process, not the end. So have had some good talks on what that could look like if it was different than what that is presented. So those talks, I'm sure, will continue to occur. Sewer wise, we are asking for another maintenance worker, not a operator 3, but a standard maintenance worker to work for sewer. As the plant does age, we have a ton of stuff to do. It's not all super technical, but the 5 lift station, adding to the coverage for the crew, I regular support with sewer manhole lids and stuff, the crew, not to be distracted, but the manhole lids on 275th that we're complaining about last year, we literally received those yesterday. That's how long the ordering has taken for the iron, i.e. the metal lids, cast iron to get cast. Joe's like, I've never seen them there. There's no rust on them. Like usually they come and they've been sitting in the yard. These are like brand new. Like these are hot off the foundry. Like, and that's how long it took. I can't. When was that complaint?
Over a year ago, I believe. Maybe a
It
year.
was sometime in after New Year.
Yeah, it was quite a while.
Usually it's a 3-week deal, but it took months. So they will be working on that this week. But those types of things, fueling and servicing the lift stations. I don't know if anybody was up last night, but the guys were out at 1 o'clock in the morning because all the lift stations alarmed, the plant went down. Obviously they all have backup generators, but some got stuck. Roger was running around all night. So, we have 3 guys to run the plant 24/7 because they have to be here every day on the weekends, every holiday. So we do need some more horsepower for that. We went through a process prior to my return that recommended an additional person at that time. So that was 19, and we didn't put it in the 21-22 budget in 2020. We talked about it, it didn't get in. Resources are there, the work is there, and the need is there. So we have put it back in, as you can see. Next slide. A couple of items we aren't specifically talking about related to FTEs, but switching to rates a little bit. Since rates are a big ticket item, right? We just went through a change with our waste management rates. I understand everybody feels it every time they pay a bill every month. That's pretty small. So we had talked about the concession building, which kind of got me going back a month or so ago and looking at some of the rates from last go round. And then the mayor was asking, like, hey, are we going to do anything with rates? At the next council meeting, Dana has a systematic list of all the rates that are indexed to go up for resolution, whether it's by construction cost indexes, engineering news record indexes, CPI, and average thereof. All of our rates are now in one tight spot. So I put this together. I recomped the cities from the last time we updated our rates, which was right before the pandemic, like right at the beginning. So I comp the same agencies, a lot of them stayed the same. Some of our rates were market, what I would consider the ones that are on the far column that have green were out of market. So I recommended they go up, but I also recommended they go up by the CPI. Which is the 2-year CPI. It's not indexed by anything, so we can do anything or nothing we want. But I thought it's a reasonable way to try to keep up with market conditions for operations, because this is rent to the Big Rock Ball Field. Most of the rent on Big Rock Ball Field goes to replacement, right? Half of the revenue goes to replacement of the turf. The other half goes to operational costs, and the soft costs of everything we buy, consumables has gone up. Obviously, our wages have gone up, so you can see I went up by that number. I rounded, so they are not exact. So if it was supposed to be, I can't see it here, but if it was supposed to be 7.81, it's a little more or a little less depending on the rounding, because I rounded to the nearest dollar. It's kind of, I don't know if it's important to Dana that we go to the dollar or not, but it's certainly easiest, to kind of visualize that way. So those are there for consideration. I expect we'll talk about them. I don't care if it's tonight or next week when Dana has the master list. One of the items that was under rate charged by the tabling and the comping was like adults for the fields. So not only the natural turf, but the synthetic turf fields. We have rates for kids. We talked pretty much at length during COVID about reducing the rates to keep kids active. That is, over, so we're back to regular rates. And then the 2 adult charges, and then lights were low comparably. So I put those at the average between our number and then the other eligible agencies that had lights. And when you say, you see King County Parks on there, it's not King County Parks countywide, it's our closest competition, which is Redmond Ridge North. So that is a county park up there, soccer field, lights, and then ball field adjacent with lights, which I believe is turf infield and grass outfield. Yeah. So that's the comp there. You might ask, what's Snowfall District? That's Chief Canaan Middle School in Fall City. Turf, lights, they rent it to the public. Upper River School District. So all those are regular rates. And while I was at it, I know concessions coming up soon. 3 of the agencies had a concession charge, which I thought I did collect. They're not on here because we don't have anything yet, but most are flat fees. And then the school district has a flat fee, 20 an hour with a $5 per hour kicker for utilities. Didn't see. So that's field rental rates. Next slide is utility rates. I'm sure we'll talk about this again because our resolution does index our water, sewer, storm rates per the 2-year rolling average of CPI. I tried to just show a monthly bill for an average consumption of 1,000 cubic feet per month. So currently, all in with sewer, water, and storm, it would be 183. With the proposed rate changes this year, it would be 198. So that's the $10.45 you see is not having any consumption charges, which is 0 to 200 cubic feet. Most, older couples, single folks, they can stay under that. Anybody who has teenagers cannot. So, yeah, those are the rates in this year's budget cycle. We are really close. If you look at when you get to look at the, revenue versus expenditures and seeing what's left over. Let's see. Water has 102,000 left, so 102,000 to the good, which is much on a $5 million operating fund. Sewer has more than that, so I didn't bother. And then storm has 94,000. And depending on when that number was updated, I noticed today as I was going through this, the stories were different than my numbers based on timing. I think what's posted in the stories is more accurate. So grain of salt, that may be a little off once we finalize a lot of the numbers. But again, consumables are up, wages are up, we have to cover those. Our operating funds can and do participate in the costs of the capital funds, because, you know, a water main doesn't just cover growth, it covers consistent and current operations and delivery of service to the customer as well. So I think maybe just stepping back a minute, you know, water can pay for water, sewer can pay for sewer, streets, and general fund can pay for streets and general fund or whatever they want, right? But water and sewer and storm are dedicated funds that fund those utilities only. They can't fund the general fund. The general fund could always fund utilities. We know that's silly, and that's not how we operate. So, and then how utility funds are rolled up, they have a operating fund like water is 401 and a capital side 407. Those are rolled up annually as a report to the state, and those is a waterworks fund. So there's blending. Nobody knows the difference when it goes to the state. Whatever we have to do, whether it's operation related or capitally related, has to get funded, and those funds are eligible to be spent that way. Impact fees for capital and operating fees for streets capital, those cannot flow that way. Funding is very particular when it comes to impact fees and then utility funds. Next slide. And Dana did an amazing job when she introduced the budget to you guys. So as you maybe can tell, Laura and I pretty much just hot sheeted hers and changed it up a little bit. Most of the data is the same. It's a little different look just to kind of go with each of our funds. But that's the current CAP list for the biennium. The budget stories will have a little more information and on the individual project level. But there you go there, and I believe that's it.
Okay.
Time.
Does anyone have any questions? Councilmember Isaacson?
It's just, it may just take me some more time to digest the slides.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to waste too much of everyone's.
And we didn't want to, and I guess we should have started too. We didn't want to ram tonight through everybody, but the good news is by getting through kind of the high level each fund, the next sets of meetings we can go in full detail on any topic that we want, because we've kind of shown everybody everything. So yeah.
So I see, so just looking at your rates and kind of like it's the same theme with the, like the comps and the parts that the general budget I have. And again, maybe we'll take more time in the future, but where my head is with some of these increases is one, there are some words in here that nice to say, hey, we are well past that, you know, the recommendation from the financial year of 2021 to increase to 2.5, and there are all these costs, but ultimately where I want to get to eventually maybe already in that box is we're recommending increasing things. What are our costs and justification for the increase? Not just because we can or because something in the past said we should. Because I look at this and see if I'm interpreting this correctly, 2.5% annual increase is recommended financial review in 2021. So we're saying 2 years later, 3.1 times that and 2.5 times that the next year. So we are far exceeding the recommendation of 2.5. So, and I don't know if you can answer now, I'm not necessarily asking, but in the future, I'm going to want to say, where is the driving need for it? And maybe that's gonna come with Dana's presentation or what, but no huge difference.
You want to bring something back
I
up?
would say, yeah, so in the back of the, if you go to slide 22, like that, we can just look at water. Which was in, you know, Dana's table from the first meeting. Again, nobody's supposed to digest it all.
Yeah.
And it's great because it has a 5-year look, starting in 19. So current budget, actual, and then estimated proposed budget.
Expenses and revenue.
Yep, so clerk is, she's almost there. Yeah, consumables are of course up, you know, meters are way up, not only in cost, but delivery time. I think we got down literally to, with all the new permits coming in, we had 3 on the shelf. So we had an order of, I don't know how many boxes it was, but it was about $45,000 in meters. Those are pass-through costs. So when we buy a new meter, right, they get a meter charge at the house, but we still have to budget to buy it. So some of those numbers should
Which
be
slide?
22.
I don't.
Building maintenance.
Oh, I rejiggered them. Keep going down.
Okay.
I put all the bar graphs in there, so yeah, keep going. Go. One more. There you go.
Oh.
Sorry, yeah. When I reshuffled the slide deck when I emailed it to you all. I actually put the bar graph with the table, so it's a little more organized than what you have in your box. So yeah, you can see, right, 22, what do you have? 693,000 in wages, and proposed for 23 is 747. That's not with new FTE currently. That's just up wages. Because the salary study, and I know Dana's on there too, if I'm saying something incorrect. That does have the engineers portion, the new one. And I don't recall if she pulled the engineer that was budgeted for 2022 to be hired, who hasn't been hired yet, in that 693. So Dana, if you could confirm that, that would help us gauge that a little more, but yeah, that's about what, 54,000 in wages.
Yeah, I believe that is correct, Steve. This does have moving the assistant engineer's salary around a little bit. And then these numbers are a teeny bit outdated because we did do small adjustments to FTE allocations, not hugely, but a little bit.
Yeah, so then the next, professional services, they're all kind of there. Okay, see. And then when you do get into the budget story, right, you can click on it and then it'll give you more information. But yeah.
Councilmember Naplan?
Yeah, this is a topic that I hope we can dive into a little deeper. I put some slides in there from the water comp plan and well, at least the sewer comp plan and some other ones that kind of talk about is the rate necessary and one thing, if you notice on here, one of the reasons why there isn't more of a surplus showing where you look at revenues less than expenditures, there's some pretty big capital costs and transfers to capital that are occurring within the operating fund. And I think what's always been difficult for me to swallow is that when the new growth comes in, it pays a general facility charge, which has two components. One component, which is a very large portion of what a new construction unit pays, is they're buying into the system. They're paying back existing rate payers to buy into the system that we all have paid for. And so there's no restriction on that money. You can use it for any capital. You could probably use it for anything because most cities, all the money is all together.
Correct.
And so it's not reserved for just growth related capital projects. So there's no reason why our GFC money couldn't be paying for these capital projects that we are making operating pay for, because the whole concept is as new growth comes, they're buying into the system and reimbursing the ratepayers. And so for years and years and years, existing residents paid for the sewer expansion. And now finally, all the new residences are coming in and they're paying in. And we're never getting any relief. It's just this constant higher and higher every year of our rates. And so for me, I feel like this is the time. We have huge surpluses growing. Even the consultant who did our sewer comp plan said, hey, we're building up some pretty big surpluses. You might need to look at even the 2.5 is necessary. So I think those are some really important points. I tried to bring them up when we were going over the sewer comp plan and the water comp plan, that I wasn't comfortable with staying on autopilot on the inflation adjustment each year, because I feel like we are now entering the time where the ratepayers can have a reprieve, because finally the money's coming in that is supposed to be repaying for all of the upkeep and the expansions that our ratepayers have paid. And I feel really passionate about this. I think the community does too, when they see their bill goes up. I mean, that's what, $15 in 1 year, and the next year, probably at least that much, because it builds, it compounds. Those are big increases, and it might seem like, oh, what's $15 a month? It adds up. And groceries are more, everything's more. At some point, we need to be only increasing when we have to. And I just feel like we have so much surplus revenue in our capital funds. It's just hard to stomach raising rates on our community members when we have so much money available to pay for these things. So that's my spiel. We can talk more about it. I went more into it than I expected, but I feel really passionate about this subject and I'm really glad, John, you brought it up.
I think at the
It's
next,
really important.
the next meeting, we can talk
Yeah.
on, like, really where is the delta?
Mhm.
And then I know Dana's working on Dana, is it a 10-year CIP?
Yes.
Yeah, so we can stretch it
Yeah.
out and really make sure, like, we're estimating what's coming in really accurately with building permits for new growth. Understand where we're
Mhm.
gonna see, I mean, to be fair too, right, yeah, sure, 2.5, but nobody expected to be at 10 a year, right? So our CPI is a 2-year smooth. Again, what we need is what we need. If we can lower it, hey, you guys make a motion and rates go up by 4%, I don't know. But I think we
Yeah.
can get to some math that shows either A, we need it all, or B, we need a portion of it, or C, we need none of it, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that table, Dana, we can probably massage a couple things and present some of that specific data. But storm is on the razor's edge.
Oh, I agree. I'm not saying across the board.
Totally,
Water
yeah.
is kind of in between.
Yeah.
Sewer, we've got an unbelievable amount of money. We basically are able to pay cash on the next expansion.
Right.
Because we had so much built up. So we're gonna pay cash basically for this gigantic sewer expansion, and then all the money is gonna keep rolling in. I mean,
Yeah,
it's,
numerators
we
and
have,
denominators, right? I mean.
we have sewer especially.
So, yeah.
And that's the one that they really made the plea to the community when they talked about the sewer expansion. Don't worry, your rates are going way up, but we'll have a reprieve when the actual houses start getting built. And so I feel now's the time.
No, we can look at that.
Thank you for letting me share that. I feel better.
This is easy. I was going through stuff today and I'm like, all right, here's what I know we're gonna need.
Thank you.
And we
Yeah,
didn't even need it, so.
it's really sewer that's the most egregious.
Yeah, and I think, well, I mean, there's other things we could always do too, you know, sustainability. I don't know if the sustainability element is gonna make us do something with our purple pipe water,
Yeah.
right?
Potentially.
Who knows? So there's other things that are gonna come out of this next couple of years. But
All right.
it's easy we'll tee that up for on the to-do list for next time.
We'll go Councilmember Isaacson, and then would you mind keeping an eye on if Councilmember Mercer raises his hand, because I can't.
Okay.
I was just, one of the items that came up while we were presenting is both Steve and I have the Parks Children Open Space Plan. I mean, because it's joint work. It's only funded in the planning department. Transportation plans funded exclusively in engineering, so no cost savings. I was kind of hoping. Yes.
Hey, we found it. Well, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Councilmember Isaacson, go ahead.
Great, great, too. I'm just trying to, that's my expectation when it comes to budgets, right? It's like, especially when they increase. I would do the same thing, we're gonna decrease. Is if you're gonna decrease rate, show me how we can survive it. I don't want anything to be misinterpreted as a personal point to you or anyone. I know you do amazing work, so it's not an integrity question at all, right?
Yeah.
I just think it's our job to take care of all of us, to take care of our.
But it's numerators and denominators, and now we're at
And it should be easy.
3,000, we clicked 3,000 service customers this year, so it's a big number. Granted, we're still, you know, under 9,000 population, but we all started here, we were 4,000 people, right? I mean, small, and you felt a change in your annual fee up or down, right? You, like Storm is, there's 70 grand left, that's it, right? That's not much. So, yes, no, we expected this is a great conversation. So thank you though.
All right, any other questions before we move on? Go ahead, Councilmember Schaefer.
The emergency planning item, Steve, what does that entail?
Getting an RFP out to get somebody to take over the plan and update our plan, right? So we should have our emergency management plan adopted by the state, and we haven't gotten to it. I reached out 2 or 3 weeks ago to North Bend to get all their stuff because they're wrapping up with their consultant. You know, I got a garage full of surplus here. We're trying to get away at what we can, but you know, prioritizing getting a consultant on board is the way to go. Nobody can dedicate the time to it. We had Pertique kind of lined up. I'm not sure when Sean was here, I was just getting back, and then, you know, COVID happened, and yeah, and we were living in the emergency management plan. So it's, you know, talks about essential functions, cooperation, multi-jurisdictional interactions. We do stay on top of incident ICS trainings. So to be certain people in the action, you have to be credentialed. Most operational staff are, what is it, ICS 1, 2, 4, 7, like 100, 200, 400, 700, but I mean, there's hundreds of ICS incident command classes offered by FEMA. There's local trainings, there's virtual trainings. So we do that, but yeah, we need to focus on it. We're so far behind. It's crazy. I could easily dedicate 10 to 20 hours.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you have to prep, plan, and practice, and we're living in a pandemic and operating, right? It works well for us in weather-related emergencies because we know our police, we know our fire, we're in town, we have the resources, school district, we all cooperate. I attend 3 meetings, 2 meetings a week, 1 other meeting every other week. River School District is launching a emergency management touch-in meeting every other week. We have the countywide emergency management meeting weekly, and then we have a regional countywide, whatever region one, touch in with that. So subgroup of the big group, that's weekly. Yeah.
And more often when an event happens, including weather, correct?
Sure, then there's daily check-ins, sometimes daily meetings, or at least daily sit rep reports coming to your desk. Yeah, they're already starting weather ones. We have a winter weather advisory for the western slopes here, over 4,000 feet. So that stuff's coming in. Last night was insane. I don't know if the rain woke any of you up, but we had thunder lightning just after 9, and then power out at 1, at least a couple inches of rain over the night. It was insane out here. And then, just out in Sultan, like rain, but it was breezy, like an elephant was on the roof.
I was actually still working and I was like, I can't leave without something. I was just gonna add though, from my perspective too, just community development, we need to be instrumental too, especially the building official and inspections. And we haven't even had capacity for people to do ICS training just because everything is so busy and our lack of capacity. And we need to recommit to emergency management.
Councilmember Mercer.
I appreciate what you presented, Steve. I just sort of had an indirect question. You kind of touched on it with the emergency management and obviously things that are more contingency, whether it's around weather, climate change, other events. I was just curious on the sort of pure infrastructure perspective, if there's any emerging technologies. I know with Planning Commission, we talked about 5G investments, car chargers, other things, not necessarily things that the city would fund because they're typically public-private, but where there's trunk infrastructure that needs to be installed or any type of system upgrades to support that would fall within the next 2 years, or if that's sort of longer horizon type investments. Internet is another one, as we make sort of stage upgrades. There's obviously the communities never really happy with one choice. Again, that's a franchise agreement, but in terms of how we support some of those where there would be funding requirements. And again, if we want to defer this till the sort of in-depth, when we dig into the budget a little more, that's fine as well, but.
Don't know that I get your question. I think one item, right? We're a non-exclusive franchise city. So if 3 internet providers want to be here, 3 internet providers can be here. We don't own many empty conduits in town. So just with the main street, right, we did dump in two empties for that. So from north end of town to Big Rock now, we have 2 pipes that can house, data. We do have fiber in our buildings run from treatment plant to City Hall to the old library visitor center to the youth center. So that stuff exists, police station included. But yeah, there's a couple of interesting reads, Ron, you might want to check out. I think it was Stanwood or Arlington. They actually ran some fiber in some of the water and or sewer pipe, right? You've got a pre-built cavity in 100% of your town. So there are options. That's one service side, but yeah, I didn't maybe hit and get quite all your question, but any of those franchises kind of fall to city administrator or legal's office, and then kind of we all pitch in on, oh, I've done a franchise agreement or 3, so we go over that. They're pretty boilerplate nowadays, though. We really can't extract, no other word to say than what we used to extract. free services for city buildings, additional franchise fees, you know, because most all that stuff just gets rolled up and rate and then passed back to us. So it's affecting the same people, right? That these utility bills. So yeah, those are different now. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah,
but-
yeah, and I think you hit my core answer. It was less around the franchise agreement, and if there's any public work investments, I think you touched on it with the conduit or other things where we need to run
Yeah.
infrastructure to support that, not necessarily that we would be from the franchise agreement. So that was really it. And it sounds like there's some future proofing in place.
Yeah, that is a new standard. So when we do Third Avenue, the design will include 2 empties as well. So we can have capabilities to run, you know, fiber services or whatever we can lease to an agency when the time comes. We'll have some of that in our in our existing infrastructure.
Mayor, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think Director Landerstein missed part of the question about the infrastructure with the electric for electric car chargers, et cetera. And right now, this budget is focused on core basics. So at this point, we don't have that programmed into the budget with all the existing staffing that we have.
I would say nothing new, but you know, the remodel will include it at the treatment plant office. I would say, I'm gonna guess our standards when we go through, I know Laura's got some municipal code updates coming through. That may become a requirement for commercial capability, maybe on Main Street or
It's
something like
already
that.
state
It's
statute,
yeah.
1/10 requires now the new station for commercial.
Yeah, so it is
But as,
coming one way or another.
yeah, but as far as like beyond those buildings, there isn't
Yeah.
planning going on to invest in that infrastructure citywide other than what we're required to do.
Yeah, and I understand that, Mayor. I mean, whether it's corporate or government, it's very much around sort of rigorous prioritization at this point. So those are sort of not core essentials. My question was more around if there's any from a compliance perspective, upcoming, you know, things where we would need to potentially be addressing in the horizon. And it sounds like they're not. That's really was the core answer I was looking for, is the budget and the investments we've included are the ones that we expect. And there's not really any beyond what we would typically build into the contingency funds anyway, any unexpected requirements coming down the pipe beyond those we've already discussed, Mayor. So thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much for your presentation. So next up, or last up, I guess, is finance and administration going together? As I see a slash, yeah, okay, so it looks like this is Director Mason then. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Dana Mason, Finance Director.
Could
Sure.
you,
Sharing.
oh, you're sharing your screen. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because you already did yours, right?
Yeah, cool,
Yeah, so
thanks.
I've
Sorry.
got mine right here. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
I was just gonna add that my presentation had not been updated, so you'll get an email of the one that was updated, but Sarah had already like saved our presentations. So when I was going through it, I'm like, oh, there's some slides missing.
Okay, well, this one will be short and sweet. There's not a lot of going on in finance. Well, there's a lot going on in finance, but not budget wise. So this first slide is just about the department. We're responsible for the budget, accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, utility billing, financial reporting and analysis of the financial software, and that includes the transparency portal that is coming soon. And I'll put a plug in for the stories in after this presentation. But generally, finance department, we just provide services to all of the other departments in the city. This is the budget, and this includes the clerk's office. So you can see that it's increased slowly over the years. Part of the reason for the increase is we, in 2021, 2022, we added an administrative 1 position. And then in these years, part of the city administrator salary was charged to finance. It's not in 2023 and 2024. So the big expenditure changes are we have a $60,000 municipal finance plan in 2023, and that's up from the $20,000 that was budgeted in 2021, 2022 by biennium. We also have an additional 7,700 budgeted for a single audit. Hopefully we'll only have to do that 1 year. So we want to spend the majority of our money in 1 year if we can, so that we don't have to have 2 single audits. And then there's also, a small increase for return to person training. And then this is the finance staff. So when I first got here, it was just me and two accounting associates. And then the city used to have a part-time accountant, 0.5 or 0.75, but that position was vacant when I got here in 2019 at the end of 2019. Then we promoted the accounting associate who was doing all of the accounting work and teaching the contracted accountant what to do to accountant. And then we hired a 0.5 payroll clerk. And then we also had the other accounting associate doing, or finance associate is what they're called now, doing utility billing and AP. That associate had to take leave. And so we asked our 0.5 payroll person earlier this year to work full-time and take on utility billing. And then we hired a limited term employee to do accounts payable and accounts receivable. And she is also the utility billing backup and the cash receiving backup. So what our accountant is also the backup for payroll and the backup for accounts payable. So we're really trying to cross-train everyone. So if someone leaves, we don't have the issues that we had this last time. And that's really all there is for finance. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
And
Go ahead, Councilmember Isaacson.
Sorry, I was just crunching some numbers and just looking. So your second slide, we talk about the increases. My computer keeps messing up. Sorry, I have to keep reloading your PowerPoint presentation.
Nina, do you want to put your slide up?
Sure, yeah.
So on the slide where you say the expenditure changes from 2021-22 to 2023, assuming that slide's summarizing, it's just in 2023.
Let me get back to that slide. It's this one right here. So in the 2021.
Oh, it's not shared.
Sorry.
I think it's slide 4.
How about now?
Yeah.
No, go to
Oh.
slide, well, and you may use that to speak to it, yeah, but if you go one more slide forward to the summary, the expenditure changes,
Yeah.
that, is that 20, so it says municipal financial up from, so is this what, 2023?
2023, yeah,
Okay.
this is professional services in 2023, except for the increase in travel and meals and training and registration.
Okay,
That
then-
is covers both years.
Great, then could you go back then? So from 2022 to 2023, it's like $150,000. So it's a huge increase.
It's about 70,000. And the reason for that is because 2021 is actual when we were pretty understaffed. 2022 budget had the city administrator budget in there, but it only had a part-time accounting associate, so 0.5. And then we also have let's see, I think in this budget we actually moved to the full-time accountant. But the reason why this is so much lower is just because we were a little understaffed in 2021 and the city administrator salary didn't start getting charged until later in the year.
So from 2022 to 2023, I see like $150,000 jump. That's what I'm trying to.
So it looks like it's about, oh, I see down below, you're looking down
Yes.
here or up to
Mhm.
291. That's about a $90,000 jump.
140 something, right? 140.
Are you talking about, I'm sorry, let me grab my pointer here. Are you talking about the salaries and wages?
No, it's the
No.
bottom line.
Oh, the bottom line. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Professional services.
Yeah, so part of that is in professional services, and that's that $60,000 for the municipal financial plan. And then also the small increase for the 7,700 for the single audit. That takes about 60 hours of auditing work.
The big picture, the big one's one you highlight. Okay, thanks.
You're
It
welcome.
comes back down. I notice it comes back down quite a bit too.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Right.
No
Any
problem.
other questions?
And I did want to say, just real quickly, as a plug for stories, you have the link. Please let us know if anything is not working. It was a frantic rush to the finish line today, but I think we got it done. And the stories will be updated as we go along. So if there is something that you want to see in there that you don't see, please let us know.
Steve.
Director Lanishevsky, go ahead.
Director Mason, is there a way that the budget is gonna snapshot each time it's edited?
Yes, not in stories, but I made a copies like from the last budget presentation to all the changes we made to this, not tons of changes, but the changes we made to this budget presentation. I made a copy of the budget, the entire budget. So we could go back to that budget if we wanted to and relink all the stories to that budget.
Should we post some versioning on the website or something under like draft folder maybe? That you could like version 1, version 2, but a date maybe?
I think it would be a little clunky for people to look at. I could pull reports. I could do a version of reports from that particular budget if that's what council wanted to see.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Thomas.
I didn't know if you wanted us to take a quick peek at our website and how it's linked now. And then maybe we could show you maybe one story and one budget.
Yeah, that'd be great. Are we done? No other questions?
Just
Right?
one real
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Isaac.
And if you know the answer to this, great. If not, don't waste time trying to look it up. You said that 2021 basically underperformed because of lower staffing levels than we budgeted for. Do you remember off the top of your head about what it was? Is it very similar to 2022 or?
Oh, what it was, the budget was before? I don't remember. Yeah.
We can find it. We can take it out. That's just
Yeah.
curious.
We can pull it. All right, we'll go ahead and share that if you'd like.
Sure. So what I'll do is I'll go to and hopefully share the right screen immediately. So if you go to the city's website and then just navigate to the finance department, and click on budget, you'll get to this page. I really hope this works.
We're all hoping for you too.
Thank you. And here we are on the biennial budget. So we've got the city overview. I'll just click there. Yes. And here it is. It just goes over
This is so cool. We had nothing like this
Yeah,
before.
I'm going back. There's the budget made message from our mayor, an org chart with our elected officials, budget process and calendar, the 2020 positions and how they've been allocated amongst the different departments, new position justifications, and then glossary and financial policies. And then if you scroll down here, this is where you can get, this middle section is an overview of the entire budget, all the funds. So if you want to look at everything together, like this page right here is the fund balance summary. So you can see each fund, and down here is kind of a cheat sheet of the funds and the numbers. Unfortunately, OpenGov doesn't pull in the fund names for this report, but you can see the estimated beginning fund balance, proposed revenues for 2023, proposed expenses for 2023, proposed ending fund balance, and then the same thing for 2024. So all of that information is right here. And if you ever want to, oh my gosh, it doesn't have the, I will find out how you can make a PDF, because you are able to make a PDF of this budget, but I don't see how you can do it on the public site. So, pardon me?
Go back.
Might be the view the report at the bottom of the.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Blue.
Right there. Oh, go back up.
It's like a little.
Or is that just pump it out in Excel
Oh,
and then
no,
you'd
this
have
is-
to?
Yeah, no, this one here, let me get to another one because the fund balance doesn't have a lot of fun stuff to show you. But I'll go back to department story. So let's go to, we'll go to the executive budget. So if you wanted to dig down a little bit deeper, and I hope this works as well, you can click on View Report. And then it brings you into the budget where you can just kind of click around and you can expand salaries and wages. There's not going to be much for the executive budget. You can expand professional services. So you can see it's divided by just regular professional services, memberships and subscriptions, interfund charges for services, travel and meals. This one might expand yet differently. So you can see the charges for services for the IT fund, building maintenance fund, equipment replacement fund. So you can really dig down a little bit more and see how it trends over the years. It's super fun.
Only a finance director would say it's super fun.
It's pretty fun too. We all have different definitions of what fun are, right, Director Mason?
I know everyone's
I was
really
playing
gonna
around
enjoy
with it.
this. Pardon me?
I was just playing around with it and I clicked on View Report and it asked for an email and password. And so I wonder, yeah, I just,
Which
anyway.
one was it? Which one was
I
it?
was on Parks and I hit View Report, so under General Fund, Parks.
Dana, that's where some of the links are still broken.
No, I think we got all of those links in. See, so you can get to this right here, Councilmember Naplin.
I can get to this, but do you see the View Report?
You're not able to get to this. So it's
No.
something to do with the public access. And I have a
Permission.
Yeah, I have a meeting with OpenGov tomorrow at 8:15 to help me with some of the issues we've been having. But I will make sure that is fixed. So you may have to wait a little while to click through to things.
We all were testing it before the meeting and that particular link on all of them is only working internally and isn't working externally.
No. So she was able to get into the site, but not the table.
No, I'm talking about
The View Report.
View report, yeah.
Yes, so now that's all of the VU reports we've tested them work. So it's just now it's the reports, but we'll get that.
None of the View Report, I am on the executive department again. And it's the same thing.
She'll get it fixed.
Yeah,
And
and that is an email that said we were still working
Yeah.
through some of those links, but the view reports, the only one I could see there were any issues with.
Hopefully that's one, you don't have to individually toggle permission for the public view. Hopefully you can have a master switch that you can
Yeah.
say,
No,
everyone can do that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is a master switch that will be able to fix it. So we just got this into the transparency portal this afternoon at like 3 o'clock. So.
Well, thank you for all of your hard work. I feel like we've transitioned a bit, I think, more into that overall budget discussion. It's also 7:41. We've just gotten all this information. So I think, I don't know, does anyone have anything they want to talk about right now? Or we could move toward just looking to our next meeting to really get into it. I just did quickly want to remind everyone, and I'm going to resend it so it goes to the top of your inbox. And I'm going to forward our attorney's reply on my email I had sent with that outline of like the spreadsheets so we can track stuff, because it is really important that when we utilize those, that we don't get into any kind of discussion on the spreadsheet. Like just state the thing you want to talk about or state your question and leave it. Don't reply to anyone's or do anything like that. So I'll re-forward that. So in case, sometimes I have a hard time searching an email. So if that's helpful to anyone, and I'll put you on it too. And we can talk about that more later too, if you want. So yeah, just if anyone has any questions on that, you had mentioned, I think it was you had mentioned having one more spreadsheet would be helpful. And now I'm forgetting what it was. We can talk about it later or figure it out. There was something else. This is kind of new. We're always pivoting and trying to improve based on like last year, we just had the one matrix spreadsheet. And now this year we have like kind of 3. So anyways, it's a process and it's just really helpful because as we get closer and closer to when we need to make decisions and adopt, we can just check things off. We've talked about it. We decided something and move on. So if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. Go to Director Thomas.
At our next meeting, we will be presenting the executive budget and non-departmental budgets. So that would be next week's.
And that's the November 1st, right?
Yes.
That's a special meeting as well.
I think that's a normal one, the first and the whatever the third one. And then maybe just I'll take this moment also to re-mention our special meetings in November, which are November 9th and 16th.
And this Saturday.
And the Saturday retreat, that's right. Yeah, I did not forget that. So yeah, if you have questions, just make sure and check the calendar too. I think all of that's on there. Because this is just going through budget is one of those times where little meetings are going to pop up, but we should know them all at this point. I can't remember, have we added more in November besides the joint meetings with?
Placeholder.
Okay.
Based on weekly meetings.
Yeah. So hopefully as we go, we'll know if we'll for sure need to keep those or if we just need to cancel them. So yeah. All right. Was there anything else under budget discussion that we needed to talk about for tonight? All right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 7:44. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna read this.